Hello, everybody. I think I'm a little bit early. 6:29. Hi, Patricia. How are you? Today is a good day for an indoor ride, I think. I think it might be raining here in Seattle. Go ahead and just start spinning easy. You're here and you're live. I'll give it, oh, my clock just ticked over to 6:30, so let's do it. Well, I gotta set up my, oh, I got a text. Let's see what Memphis says. Okay, Memphis having Zoom issues. Are you here on this one, Memphis? All right, let me restart my computer. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. Go. All right, let's go. So if you are just waking up, make sure you spend that first minute nice and easy, easy gear, turn your legs over. And as you warm up, hey Marion, as you warm up, you can just start switching gears. If you've already got a little bit of warm up in, you can ride a little bit harder. One thing that just came up, I was just rode for like 5 minutes and I was getting off to start the video and plug in the microphone. And the back wheel was, running. One thing you do not want to do on your trainer is hit the back brake to stop the wheel because of the tension on the flywheel. You just want to let it come to a rolling stop. So you probably don't hit the brakes anyway, but just something that came up in my head. All right, let's see. Today's workout's going to be interesting because we haven't done it before. The main set, we're going to do 3 times through. So we're going to do a minute at your upper aerobic zone, which is where things just are very slightly uncomfortable. If you're new to this and haven't been doing a lot of cycling or a lot of speed workouts, you should maybe go just a touch above that into the uncomfortable zone. But for those of you who've been here for 8 weeks, maybe longer, we're going to go 75% of FTP, which is top of our aerobic zone, so just slightly uncomfortable. Then we're going to go 2 minutes hard. So we want to think about the hard as being at the top end, maybe above your Olympic distance race pace. So it's not very, very hard, but it's definitely above uncomfortable. I meant that. So that's 2 minutes. So that's it's not the end of the world, and you can do that longer, but it's going to make us sweat. And then we're going to come back to the 75%, which is, again, the upper end of our aerobic zone for a minute. So that's 4 solid minutes of right around that crossover point from when you go aerobic to anaerobic. And that 2 minutes means we're going to be spending quite a bit of time in between in that tempo slash threshold zone. And then we're going to do 1 minute mid aerobic. That's our gear of choice, cadence of choice. Still working, but we're recovering. Then we're going to do a minute of recovery. And then we're going to do a minute 30 at the bottom end of our aerobic. So really the minute recovery and the minute 30 at the bottom end of our aerobic is where we're getting our recovery. So it's really like 4 minutes, pretty solid, a minute in the middle, and then 2.5 minutes recovery. Repeat that 3 times. Then at the end, for good measure, we're going to go 30 seconds very hard, just one time. I need to calibrate my Compi trainer. Give me a second here. So if you haven't already, switch to a slightly harder gear. When I calibrate my Compi trainer, I have to bring it up above 25 miles per hour and let it coast down. And it gives me a tension setting. So if when you do calibrate your trainer, in case there's anybody new on here, you want to spin the knob so it presses up against the tire. You know it's the right amount of tension when you hold the flywheel and then grab the wheel and just moderately pull up. If the wheel slips, if your bike wheel slips on the flywheel, you need more press-on tension. Looks like maybe we lost a few regulars. Maybe they're out enjoying the summer on vacation. Maybe you're there and you haven't said hi. So 5 minutes in, go ahead and switch to a little bit harder gear. Right now I'm in my big chain ring and my easiest big chain ring gear, which again means I'm not using the 2 gears next to the spokes on the inside. I was out riding yesterday and a little bit was on the Burke-Gilman Trail. It was a great place to play around with your gear of choice where you're just riding along and you're in a nice groove and then you look down. And so for me, probably because I have 11 gears on my bike, that gear of choice is the big chain ring and then not the, the 2 gears we don't use and then boom, boom, 1, 2, 3, it's in there. I tried it in my small chain ring in the hardest gear and it was a little bit easier. So I was just out riding. I was like, oh, I wonder how I feel in the small chain ring. I wonder how I feel in the big chain ring. And the big chain ring in the easier gears where I gravitate towards. Now, if I only had 9 gears on my bike, I think that would be a different story. So your bike setup makes a big difference in that regard. My music decided to stop. All right, 7 minutes. So we're gonna do 2 times 45 seconds slow cadence, 2 times 45 seconds high cadence after 10 minutes, and then we're gonna jump into the main set. I think it's 45 minutes. So if anybody is out there, they're watching this, say on a recording, and you're new to the workouts, send me a note because there's a lot of tips that I've already given to people who have been here that I'll hold off on because I don't need to hear them for the 8th time. But if you're new to it, there's tips you maybe haven't heard. So reach out to me and then I'll sprinkle those in. No Maureen. Thanks, Samantha. So go ahead and bring your effort up. Start bringing it up into solidly or aerobic zone. Maybe find that that gear of choice where you can spin at 90 and you feel pretty comfortable doing so. The other thing I noticed yesterday, I was doing that drill that I like to do where you get to 90 cadence and you look at your speed, you shift the gear harder, your cadence will drop initially, and then you bring it back up to 90. And then after 20, 30 seconds or so, even though you're in a harder gear, you start to create this like momentum. And 90 feels good even though it's harder gear. And then you do it again, you switch to harder gear. Cadence drops, bring it back up, keep going. And eventually you find the gear where you can no longer maintain 90 cadence. And that helps you identify where that gear of choice is. Also helps you push your comfort zone in your gear of choice to 1 gear harder. So that was actually a really cool way to pass like 5-10 minutes yesterday. And you can also pay attention to your breathing rate and how it rises. All right, let's work our way, find ourselves in the big chain ring. Remember, first one, low cadence. We're not looking for a lot of effort. We're just looking to find a gear that creates tension all the way through the pedal stroke. We're going 3, 2, 1, go. So switch gears to a place where we want to aim for between 60 and 70 RPMs. And we want to identify the tension in the pedal stroke. And let's focus on pulling back to the bottom of the pedal stroke. Let's focus on bringing our belly button to our spine, elongating like a full string through your spine. Pull your head out of your shoulders. Relax your elbows. You might start to breathe a little bit hard, but you're not working hard. You really just want to focus on that pedal stroke and finding power in your pedal stroke. As opposed, okay, go ahead and recover. So small chain ring if you want. So from there, I just switched to the small chain ring without making an adjustment in the rear derailleur. And that's because I knew I was going to be going into this very easy cycling. So, you know, you could accommodate that large jump. It wasn't so shocking to the knees. But on the next one, maybe spend 2 pedal strokes mashing down. So top of the pedal stroke to 3 o'clock. Just a couple, so you feel how jerky it is, and you feel how inefficient it is on your legs. And then get back to the full pedal stroke. So let's find our way back to the big chain ring. Okay, ready, go. So switch gears, get yourself into that low cadence, hard gear. So just mash a couple. You see my body moves now. Work on being smoother. You can see it's so much better. It does require a little bit of effort, energy, concentration to smooth out that pedal stroke. So go ahead and bring the effort up a little bit from last time. All right, recover. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do 2 times 40 seconds high cadence. So my challenge for you on the second one is to go into a harder gear than the first one and keep your cadence up at 90. Okay, so the first one, you're gonna find that gear of choice they naturally gravitate towards. For some of you, it's a small chain ring, some of you, it's a big chain ring. Make note of that. And then on the second one, 1 or 2 gears harder, keeping your cadence at 90. If you start off in a small chain ring, there's a good chance your second one's going to need to be in the big chain ring. All right, so find your gear of choice. For me, it's the big chain ring. So I'm getting there now. Ready, go. I have to stop. So find that gear where it's just moderately hard in 90 cadence. And you can switch gears a couple times to find it. Because mainly what I want to do is step this up for the next one. So if your cadence is at 93, 95, go to a harder gear. Take a peek back and see what gear you're in. Okay, the next time we do this, it's going to require a lot of concentration. Okay, recover. So 1 gear harder at least, maybe 2 gears harder. It should require effort and work to go from 88 cadence to 90. That's what I'm looking for. I'm in the second story of a old Seattle home where in the winter it's super cold up here, and now it's like super warm up here. So I was drinking and I was like, oh man, that water feels good. Okay, here we go. We're going 3, 2, 1, go. So again, find a harder gear and then make sure your cadence is at 90, which means you're gonna have to work harder. So really work on your form, work on your pedal stroke. Right now I'm at 87, 89, 90. You can tell the effort's a lot harder now. And I'm going back to 89. So now I got to fight to get back to 90. This is where having a more efficient pedal stroke is handy and helpful. Okay, recover. Whew. And you can tell you're sweating a lot more. All right. We're going to start off in 35 seconds. A minute, upper end of our aerobic. So just, you know, slightly uncomfortable, but still, you can still say maybe 5 words before taking a breath kind of thing. And then we're going to go 2 minutes hard, unless you knew you're going to just keep it at a slightly uncomfortable. But for the rest of us, we're bumping it up. Think about doing an Olympic distance triathlon. Think about going a little bit harder than that. Then we're going to come back down to where we started. Then we're going to start working the recovery. Okay, ready? Here we go. Go. So 1 minute. Go ahead and switch gears. Find that gear a little bit harder than gear of choice. Find that gear where you start to work a little bit, but you're not out of breath. Get our cadence to 90. Maybe take a peek at this gear, because this is the gear we're coming back to. This is the effort we're coming back to in 2 minutes. It'll feel harder then because we're coming off a 2 minute block. So for any of you that had an Olympic distance plan this year, they got wiped out. Now it's your revenge on the race. You can think about doing that race. You can think about pushing in. Here we go, 2 minutes, go. So think about you're out on that race course. Maybe visualize the race course. And it's a shorter period, so we're gonna ride a little bit harder. So now I'm in that place where it's challenging to keep my cadence at 90. It takes a lot of concentration. I naturally can't and don't want to talk as much. You know you're doing it right when your music is important. You need the good music to be motivated. That's how you know you're working hard. Good job, 30 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. One gear easier, unless you switched up 2 gears. Automatically 1 gear easier. It's like so much easier for me. I don't know about you. It's like the cadence shoots up, the effort starts to calm down. Still working. Nice job. So a solid 4 minutes. We're gonna go 1 gear easier in 8 seconds. Should find ourselves in that gear of choice. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Gear change. Yeah. Exhale. This one is definitely that gear of choice for me. Just feels nice and smooth. Feels like home. You know, when you, after those 2 harder gears, you get back into this gear, and you're like, oh man, start to recover. But I'm still riding pretty well. You know, you're riding above your average speed for the ride. You're not really working too terribly hard. All right, 1 minute recovery. So go into the small chain ring. Maybe switch your backside a couple times harder than small chain ring. Okay, goal here with recovery. Just keep your legs moving. I don't care about the cadence. Mine's at 80, 78. I don't care about the pedal tension other than it should be easy to almost non-existent. Great time to towel off. Great time to get some water. Okay, the next minute and a half is going to be the low end of our aerobic, so it should be a gear easier than that gear of choice. Basically, the reason for this is I want to bring us back up before we hit the harder stuff. Okay, minute and a half, go. So that could be in your small chain ring, one of your harder gears. The small chain ring could be in your big chain ring. Should definitely be an easier gear than your gear of choice, because after a minute and a half, we're going to bump up. And this should be like a gear harder than your gear of choice. And it should be at the upper end of that aerobic zone. There's a line that we, you know, it's a graduation as we go from aerobic to anaerobic, but there's an inflection point. And that's considered your aerobic threshold. It's the top end of your aerobic zone. And there's an inflection point. When you cross that, your legs start to accumulate more lactate and they start to get fatigued. And so the more you can identify that line, you can stay there and you can learn to use that line. I have a way with words, a bunch of made up words. But you want to find that aerobic threshold because a lot of times you want to just play around with crossing it. Feels like home. I should get a crochet myself a little thing that says gear of choice. Feels like home. Home is where the gear of choice is. All right, we're gonna go, ready, minute, 75%. So for me, that's big chain ring. Bring our cadence up. Remember, this is the beginning of 4 minutes. So we want to bring that effort up right to the inflection point. You probably noticed, and if you didn't, you should pay attention to this. So right now, you're maybe just getting a tiny bit of fatigue in your legs, but you're not accumulating it, right? This is when we build up that lactate, our body can still flush it out. When we go above the inflection point, we start to accumulate that fatigue. So see if you notice in the next 2 minutes, as it goes on, you start to accumulate that fatigue. Ready? Here we go. So 1 year or 2 years harder. Maybe you want to stand up. So see if you start to notice how you're beginning to accumulate that fatigue. Now, if we went all out, like some of the other stuff we did, you can accumulate massive fatigue in 30 seconds. But here, we're slowly starting to accumulate that fatigue, but it's happening. And we also know that we can't maintain this for too terribly long. So think about on your Olympic distance race, a little spike in the road, a little hill, where you have to go harder just briefly, and then you'll do a micro recovery. And you might find a place here where you're toggling between gears, and that's okay too. The great thing about going 1 gear harder is, man, you bump down to 1 gear easier, 15, 20 seconds feels like magic in terms of recovery. All right, we're going to go in 5 seconds back to that other side of the inflection line, the aerobic side. Ready, go. So switch a gear easier. We're still working here, just at a lower effort. So this is definitely, we're racing here. This might even be like a micro recovery in a race. And then you're going to toggle back up to a harder gear because we're right on that line. Remember, the shorter the race, the more time we can spend above that line. The longer the race, the more time we spend above that line, the more danger we're in of bonking. Whew, that was a quick 4 minutes. 3, 2, 1, gear change easier. Back home. It does feel like home. It feels good. It's like, oh, I'm glad to be back in this gear. So this is the place that I think all of us really love to ride because we're still riding well. We're not riding slow, but we're also not really getting that tired. I feel like that one went by quicker. This is where you start to take kind of more relaxed breaths. Okay, we're going to recover here. So to make a smoother transition, right side, 3 clicks harder, then shift your left side, small chain ring. All right, we'll stay on the back soon. little better. Still not there fully. My back is not back yet. Okay. Minute, very easy. Get some hydration. And then we do a minute 30 low end aerobic. Whew. My arms are sweating. That's how you know you're working hard. Last one. So we get in the last one. It means that maybe that's 75%. Maybe you start really toggling between gears and really trying to fine tune that aerobic threshold, that inflection point. Ready? Minute and a half. So let's get in the low end of the aerobic. Cadence should be up at 90. Now, when we do this last one, when you get into that 2 minutes hard, you can pick some gears that force your cadence into the mid to low 80s if you want to. Basically what that means is you're in a gear that's too hard to spin 90. But we're there specifically to raise the intensity, to raise the workload in our quads, to build up more lactate and our body can clear. And then when we go back down under the aerobic threshold, the body will start to clear that lactate. And if you've ever gone out too hard in a race, it's easier to do in running races. And you're just building up that lactate, building it up, and then it's just, you just have like your muscles almost seize. Or you get done with the race and you can't walk or you can't sit down. You definitely feel a lot in a marathon when it's really hard to sit down afterwards. That's a lot of lactate in your muscles. All right, here we go. Let's find ourselves in a minute, bring ourselves up to that aerobic threshold. Maybe even find that spot. If you want to really go hard this last one, find that spot where you know you're over the aerobic threshold and then go one gear easier. See if you can toggle gears. If you're in a gear and your cadence is above 90, then you go to a harder gear and it drops below 90, or it's more challenging, then that's a good 2 gears to toggle between. If you want to do some more out of the saddle efforts in these 2 minutes, by all means, that will raise the effort. Ready? Here we go. 2 minutes. Let's really push. Think about getting your money's worth out of spin class. right, 5 seconds. We're going back to that upper end aerobic threshold. Ready, go. There should be a gear that you just switched to that you're thankful you're out of that 2 minutes. At the same time, you start to feel it getting easier. But remember, we're still working. All right, 4 seconds, and we go gear easier. Ready, go. Keep your cadence at 90. Whew. I went extra hard in that 2 minutes. I did not want to talk. Only because it was just like, you get to that place, there's so much concentration required that there's no room for talking. That's how you know you're working hard to very hard. You're also looking at the time and you're like, man, can I hold on? Whew. All right, we got 15 seconds here, and then we're going to go to recovery. So I want you to execute your most flawless big to small gear front ring change. And typically, you're going to do that. Maybe try 4 gear changes harder on the right, and then the left. Ready, go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, small chain ring. Yeah, nice and smooth. All right, recovery here. And we're going to go back up to 1.5 minutes in the low aerobic zone. Maybe through that 1.5 minutes, I'll bring you back up to the top of the aerobic zone because we're going to do 30 seconds very hard. So 30 seconds, just all out. And you should probably accumulate more fatigue in your legs, more lactate in your legs in 30 seconds than we did in those 2 minutes. Let's use that as a barometer. All right, here we go. So take a drink of water if you want. Let's start working our way just to into the aerobic zone. Now, wherever you were, let's go 1 gear harder. Get our cadence up to 90. So I'm going the big chain ring. One of my easier big chain ring gears. Sweating like crazy. All right, 40 seconds in. So maybe 1 gear harder. We're going to raise ourselves to that upper aerobic, and then we're going to blast out 30 seconds. Probably going to be a good amount of standing. Your cadence can drop. Okay, 1 gear harder. Pay attention to how it feels. If it doesn't feel like you're towards the top end of your aerobic, bring your cadence up. Try a harder gear change. Want the breathing to become a little bit labored, because when we go hard, it's 30 seconds. It's like you're chasing that green light. You know it's going to change, but you also know you can make it. Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 30 seconds. Come on, green light. Switch harder gears. Push that pedal stroke. 3, 2, 1, recover. Okay, this is where you basically collapse on your bike. So recover big time. This is where, like, you push it so hard that you can't be in that aerobic recovery. You need to be super easy, maybe even coasting. But you made the light. Good for you. Now you can just coast for a little bit until your breath comes back. Then you can start riding. Whew. Man. That was good. That was tough. Tough in a different way, I think. Tough in a, for me, and I'm going to assume you had a similar experience. Tough in a sustained way, right? Not tough in like that last 30 seconds, like if we did a bunch of efforts closer to that. That's tough in a different kind of way. That's tough in like a more painful way, like a higher pain threshold. What we did today is, it's harder and it's that sustained effort. And sometimes that sustained effort, even though the pain threshold's lower, it still takes a lot out of you. It takes a lot of concentration. But it's also fun to do, I think. And I think it's where you really you start building your ability to ride a little harder, more steady for longer periods of time. You become a better cyclist, and you definitely can race triathlons better. I say that because like bike racing is totally different. Bike racing is a bunch of that stuff we just did, 30 seconds, boom, recover, all these surges. In triathlon, we want to really put out our most steady effort. We want to be consistent, or we want to maybe toggle that line, but that's still consistency, consistently toggling that line. All right, let's go to a pretty easy gear. Maybe small chain ring. My cadence is like 103. And then let's switch to a harder gear. Cadence still high. So I want the effort to be moderate. And now let's switch to a harder gear. Basically, when you find yourself at 90, you can stay there. So I'm at 96. 1 gear harder. Now I start to feel the pedal tension, 89, 90, 92. All right, get into that groove. So if you're above 90, go ahead 1 gear harder. If you're a little bit below 90, just work on bringing it back up to 90. Maybe a little bit above. I'm at 94, so I'm gonna go 1 gear harder. Now I'm in my last gear in my small chain ring, meaning I still have 2 to go, but I'm not gonna use them. We made the light, nice. We look back, everybody made the light. All right, groups together. All right, now let's start going the other way. Let's go 1 gear easier. We got 1:30 to just recover. So let your cadence be lower. Let your breath start to come down. If you're ever riding with a group and you see that light changing and you're at the back, it's the worst, right? Because people at the front are going to make it. So here's a tip for you, 1 gear easier. If you're out riding with some people, and especially if you're, more at the back of the group. Not going to be there on Monday? Okay, have fun wherever you're going. And you're riding, and you see there's a light up there. Pay attention to what's going on in the crosswalk. If the crosswalk is walk sign, you have more time before the light's going to turn yellow, and you don't have to move yourself up into the group, right? And you can make the light. If you look and you see it just started to blink, then it's a signal to yourself that you better start getting on it, getting your cadence up, maybe getting your gear change, maybe moving up into the middle towards the front of the group. because that light's going to change as you're coming up to the intersection. You're either going to make the light or you're not going to make the light, depending on how much time is left. But you have an advanced warning by looking at the crosswalk sign. And then there's times when you see that it's already stopped blinking, it's gone to solid stop, and maybe it's been there for 5 seconds, and you know nobody's going to make the light. In that case, you can just ride easy, because you're like, well, I know those guys are making the light, so I'm just going to chill back here because we're all going to stop eventually. So, especially if you are riding people with faster than you, really start to hone in on what's going on with those lights. And then you can either make it with the group without killing yourself, or you know that nobody's going to make it and you can recover at the light. All right, 20 seconds easy. Kind of the same thing if you're riding by yourself. You can play the same game. There's a light at the top of Stone Way. Sometimes I ride up and you can see it, and it's an incline. So even if you want to go hard, it's really hard to go hard. But once in a while, you can just bury yourself and make the light, which is a good feeling when you make the light. All right. It also works for a nice anaerobic effort. So in bike teams, they sprint for city limit signs as a way of just throwing in that fast effort. That's more of a bike thing than triathlon thing. So anyway, I'll see you Monday. Meant to have a great weekend. Thanks for being here, everybody. That was a good one. Patricia. Have a good day.